Good morning. Hope you're having a great start to your day. So last night in Abu Dhabi, Gurney's second cousin, the chief rabbi of Abu Dhabi, a young Chabad rabbi, about 30 years old, got married to a girl whose father is the head chief rabbi in Europe, in one of the countries. And over 1,500 people witnessed this wedding that was done to coincide with the second anniversary of the Abraham Accords, which brought peace and prosperity between UAE and Bahrain and Israel and Morocco and other countries. And it was a remarkable show of unity. Hundreds of Chabad rabbis who are in Islamic countries or other places in Europe were there. There was many sheiks and people in white robes and turbans and women dressed in modest Muslim attire, and they all, men danced together with these men and the women with these women, and it was a tremendous celebration. And it made me think about the Rebbe's legacy. You know, it's 27 years since the Rebbe's passing, and here you look at Abu Dhabi and you look at any country, if it's in the Dominican, in the Caribbean, if it's in Mauritius Island, the Gurney sisters there, and the Rebbe's continued legacy of bringing Jews together, bringing Judaism to Jews wherever they are. In fact, there's a mikvah that was built by Chabad in UAE. There's a preschool, there's a school, there's a Sunday school, there's a restaurant, there's shul. It's just remarkable. And it made me think about something very beautiful in this week's Torah portion. You know, we read about Bikurim, the first fruit gift that every Jew would bring to Jerusalem in the Holy Land. And the word says, "V'haya ki tavo al arts," when you come to the promised land, Asher Hashem lekecha nosen lechal rishta, that God gives you to inherit, and you should bring the first fruit to God. But the Orach Chaim, the holy Orach Chaim, who lived in the holy city of Jerusalem, says a remarkable thing. He says, what's the spiritual meaning to this? And he said that the message is to every single Jew that the day will come when you will come to the promised land. What's the promised land? The promised land is when you come to face God. After 120, you come to the Garden of Eden. What's the first thing you're going to have to bring to God in the promised land in your day when you face the Almighty? God's going to say, where are your first gifts? Show me what you have brought to me. What's the gift? What are the things you accomplished in the world? What did you do? The Torah, the mitzvot. God's going to want you to bring it to Him. And that's what it means when you come to the promised land, that God shows you and you're going to bring these first fruit to God. The first thing you're going to do is show God, this is what I did. I accomplished my mission, what you expected from me. If it was in honesty and dealings with others, if it was the way I nurtured our children, the way I went to shul, the way I kept kosher and Shabbos, the way I was charitable to others. But then the Orach Chaim takes it even a step deeper. And he says that it says to the land that God is giving you an inheritance. An inheritance, he says, also means a legacy. And he says what the Torah is telling us is that when you come to God, to the promised land, when you come to your day of judgment, then God's going to ask you first for the first fruit. What did you accomplish? But then He's going to ask you, don't just tell me what you brought to me, but what's your legacy? What did you leave on earth for your children, for your grandchildren, for your community, for those that you impacted? What is the things that you left for them? Because ultimately, it's not just what we bring with ourselves, but it's what we leave for the others. You could be the wealthiest, most affluent person, but if you don't leave other than physical wealth for your children, what have you left? And that's the message Orach Chaim says, that God says, "V'haya ki tavo al arts," when you come to the promised land in the day of judgment. What's your inheritance? What's your legacy that you've left? You know, on Yom Kippur we dress in white always. And one of the reasons is because it's supposed to remind us of the day of judgment. The day that we're going to face, we're all going to be in white and shrouds. And we're going to face God. And what are we going to bring Him on that day? What's going to be our legacy we left? They say the remarkable story of Eddie Jacobson. And I'm sure you might have heard of it. When Eddie Jacobson, who was a dear friend of Harry Truman, they had a haberdash business together before Harry Truman became president. And then when Israel was lobbying to become a new state, and there was a lot of people against it, and they weren't sure where America would be, and President Weitzman pushed Eddie Jacobson to plead with Harry Truman to get a meeting for President Weizmann, to see Harry Truman, to maybe be able to convince him to vote in favor of the young state. And Eddie Jacobson traveled a few times to meet with Harry Truman and to plead his case. And Harry Truman agreed and met with President Weizmann. And he was persuaded by the President of Israel, of the newly elected later state of Israel, to vote in favor. And we all know the rest is history, that America voted in favor of the establishment of the state of Israel, which of course led to the actual UN recognition of Israel as a state. Years later, they say the story when Eddie Jacobson was on his deathbed and he was sitting with his daughter, and his daughter said to him, turned to him and said, Eddie turned to his daughter and he says, "I feel so bad, I don't leave you any inheritance, any money to you as my daughter. I apologize, all the extra little money that I had, I used to travel back and forth to Washington to persuade then President Harry Truman to vote in favor of the state of Israel." And his daughter turned to him and says, "Dad, don't worry, I don't need an inheritance from you. Your legacy is my inheritance. The legacy you've left, the impact you've made is the greatest inheritance you could give me." And that's what our Chaim is telling us. As we come to prepare for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we have to think to ourselves, that day that we part from this world, what are going to be the first fruit we're going to bring to God? But more importantly, what's going to be the legacy we leave for our family and friends and community? God bless you and have a great day.